What if the most terrifying part of a horror classic wasn't the monsters at all? What if the real reason this film disturbed audiences was something hiding in plain sight, something never advertised, never explained, and never softened? Night of the Living Dead didn't just scare viewers, it unsettled them in ways critics couldn't fully describe at the time. Behind its grainy black and white images are buried decisions, silent messages, and an ending that broke rules no one realized existed. And once you see what was really happening, the film never feels the same again. Fact number 1. The ending was never written as a twist. The final death in Night of the Living Dead is often remembered as shocking, but it was never designed to function as a cinematic twist. George A. Romero structured the ending to feel procedural rather than dramatic. Ben survives the siege through logic and restraint, only to be killed instantly by a rescue posse doing what they believe is routine cleanup. There is no hesitation, no recognition, and no investigation. His death mirrors livestock disposal more than heroism. The still photo montage that follows mimics documentary evidence, not mourning. Romero's intent was to show that when authority returns after chaos, it often acts without curiosity. Survival does not guarantee safety. Order does not mean justice. The horror shifts from monsters to systems. That emotional void is the point. The film refuses to reward endurance, and that refusal unsettled audiences far more than gore ever could. Fact number 2. The film entered the public domain by mistake. Night of the Living Dead became public domain immediately due to a missing copyright notice after a last-minute title change. This error meant anyone could duplicate, broadcast, or sell the film without permission. It spread uncontrollably through late-night television, grindhouse theaters, and unofficial screenings. Children saw it. Unprepared audiences encountered it without context. The lack of ownership made the film feel less like a movie and more like a cultural intrusion. Romero and his team lost long-term profits, but the film gained something else: omnipresence. It couldn't be recalled, censored, or softened. That accidental freedom allowed the imagery to embed itself deeply into collective memory, giving the film a reputation that felt almost forbidden. Fact number 3. The news broadcasts were designed to confuse you. The television segments in the film are intentionally contradictory. Experts argue, explanations change, anchors speak confidently while being wrong. Romero modeled this chaos after real emergency coverage, where information arrives incomplete and often misleading. There is no trusted voice to anchor the audience. This creates unease not through fear, but through instability. Viewers are forced into the same uncertainty as the characters. In 1968, this felt disturbingly familiar. The film wasn't predicting misinformation, it was reflecting it. Horror becomes bureaucratic noise, and clarity never arrives. Fact number 4. The basement argument is the film's true climax. The most violent conflict in the film is not between humans and the dead, but between Ben and Harry Cooper. Their argument over whether to hide in the basement fractures the group beyond repair. Cooperation collapses. Pride replaces survival strategy. Romero presents this conflict as inevitable. The dead are manageable. People are not. The basement itself becomes symbolic. Safety that requires submission versus risk that requires trust. The film never declares who is right. It simply shows the cost of division. By the time the dead break in, the damage is already done. Fact number 5. Children were never supposed to see this film. Because Night of the Living Dead was released before the MPAA rating system existed, there were no restrictions on who could see it. Children were legally allowed into theaters, and many attended matinee screenings without warning. The response was immediate. Newspapers condemned the film not simply for violence, but for what they described as emotional cruelty. There were no guiding morals, no reassurance that order would return. Adults failed repeatedly, families disintegrated. Even survival offered no reward. Critics struggled to classify a horror film that refused comfort or instruction. It did not protect young viewers with fantasy or consequence. The unease this caused became part of a larger conversation about audience exposure. contributing to the push for a formal rating system shortly afterward. Fact number 6. The zombies were never meant to be the focus. George A. Romero never used the word zombie in the film. The creatures are referred to only as ghouls, and they operate without clear rules or mythology. They are slow, confused, and poorly coordinated. Their danger does not come from intelligence or strength. It comes from persistence. Romero designed them as environmental pressure rather than central antagonists. The real breakdown occurs among the living. Panic escalates, communication collapses, cooperation erodes under stress. The undead simply apply constant force, revealing how quickly order dissolves. By minimizing the monsters, the film shifts attention away from spectacle and toward behavior. The threat is not invasion, it is reaction. Fact number 7. The black and white look wasn't an artistic choice. The film was shot in black and white primarily due to budget limitations, not stylistic ambition. Color film was more expensive and impractical for the production. However, the limitation worked to the film's advantage. The imagery resembled contemporary news footage rather than polished cinema. Blood appeared darker and less theatrical. Shadows felt harsher and more intrusive. Viewers subconsciously processed what they were seeing as closer to documentation than fiction. The lack of color stripped away spectacle and emphasized contrast and movement. What might have weakened the film instead made it feel unsettlingly real. It did not look staged, it looked observed. Fact 8. The hero's casting was never commented on in the script. Ben's race is never acknowledged within the story. There is no line of dialogue that explains it, reacts to it, or frames it as significant. The script did not specify race at all. Dwayne Jones was cast simply because he was the strongest actor available, and George A. Romero made a deliberate choice not to alter a single line to address it. That silence mattered. By refusing to comment, the film denied audiences an interpretive guide. Meaning was not assigned, it was absorbed. As a result, viewers projected their own assumptions onto the ending. Ben survives the night through competence and restraint, only to be killed without warning by an organized group restoring order. The film never states why this happens. It never explains how to read it. That absence forced audiences to confront what they were seeing without instruction. The discomfort did not come from a message delivered, but from one withheld. The film does not declare meaning, it allows interpretation to become unavoidable. Fact number 9. The posse is framed like a documentary, not a rescue. The men who shoot Ben are not presented as villains. They are calm, methodical, casual. Their dialogue is relaxed, even conversational. The camera does not dramatize their arrival. There is no heroic framing, no swelling music, no moment of relief. Instead, the sequence is filmed like routine labor. Shots are fired, bodies are moved, fires are lit. The work continues. Romero frames the posse the same way earlier scenes frame radio operators and broadcasters, functionaries carrying out a task. There is no emotional emphasis placed on Ben's death because the characters outside the house do not see it as meaningful. From their perspective, the threat has already been categorized. Anything inside the structure is treated as part of the problem. This neutrality is intentional. By refusing to signal outrage or tragedy, the film presents violence as normalized once authority decides a situation is under control. The lack of judgment is the point. Fact number 10. The film has no traditional protagonist arc. Ben does not undergo a transformation. He does not start flawed and end improved. He does not learn a lesson that prepares him for survival. From the moment he arrives at the farmhouse, he behaves competently. He boards windows, he organizes resources, he assesses danger. His actions are practical, not symbolic. The film denies him a character arc on purpose. There is no emotional progression to reward. Ben does not earn survival through growth because survival is not portrayed as something that can be earned. It is situational, temporary, arbitrary. By removing the traditional arc, the film breaks a fundamental storytelling expectation. Audiences wait for payoff that never comes. The result feels unresolved, even unfair. That discomfort mirrors real disasters. Where preparation does not guarantee safety and outcomes are not shaped by narrative logic. The absence of transformation is not a failure of writing, it is a rejection of reassurance. The story ends not because it has concluded, but because circumstances have shifted. Fact number 11. The radio is more dangerous than the dead. Information enters the farmhouse primarily through radio and television broadcasts. Each update promises clarity. Each one fails. Safe zones are announced and later denied. Plans change without explanation. Authority figures speak with confidence that is repeatedly undermined by events. Romero presents media not as a stabilizing force, but as a source of movement without safety. Characters take risks based on reports that are already outdated. They leave shelter. They separate. They trust voices that cannot see them. The dead outside are predictable. The information inside is not. The danger is subtle. No broadcast directly kills anyone. Instead, it creates decisions that feel reasonable at the time and disastrous in hindsight. This makes the threat harder to identify. The film does not accuse the media of malice. It portrays it as overwhelmed, speculative, and unreliable. In a crisis without verified truth, communication becomes another hazard. Trusting it feels necessary. Relying on it proves fatal. Fact number 12. The film was considered socially irresponsible. Upon release, Night of the Living Dead was criticized not just for violence, but for what it refused to provide. Reviewers and commentators accused it of offering despair without guidance. There was no lesson, no rebuilding. No sense that cooperation or morality would be rewarded in the end. This absence was interpreted as dangerous. Horror films were expected to restore order, reinforce norms, or at least suggest a future beyond chaos. Romero did none of these. The film ends with containment, not healing. The threat is neutralized, but nothing is fixed. Romero rejected the idea that a film must instruct its audience. His goal was observation, not reassurance. Real crises do not resolve themselves neatly. They leave damage, confusion, and unanswered questions. By reflecting that reality, the film unsettled viewers who expected art to comfort rather than confront. The charge of irresponsibility came from the film's refusal to soften what it depicted. Fact number 13. The still photo ending was a last-minute decision. The closing montage of still images was not part of the original conception. It was added to intensify emotional distance. Moving footage would have encouraged empathy. Motion implies continuity. Still, images feel archival. By freezing Ben's death into photographs, the film transforms him from a character into a record. He is no longer someone being watched in real time. He becomes documentation, evidence, a case closed. The grainy images resemble crime scene photos or newspaper prints, not cinematic tragedy. This choice strips the ending of momentum. There is no release, no transition into aftermath, just a catalog of actions already completed. The stillness denies emotional processing. The audience is not guided toward grief or anger. They are left with images that feel final and impersonal. Romero understood that detachment would linger longer than drama. By ending the film as if it were already history, he denies viewers the comfort of participation. The story does not end. It is filed away. Fact number 14. The film redefined apocalypse by refusing to explain it. There is no origin story in Night of the Living Dead, no scientific cause, no experiment gone wrong, no villain delivering exposition. The dead simply rise, and no one knows why. Romero deliberately avoided explanation because explanation creates distance. Once a threat is understood, it becomes manageable. Mystery keeps fear active. By refusing clarity, the film traps both characters and viewers in the same uncertainty. The lack of answers also shifts focus. The story is not about how the apocalypse began, but how people respond once it exists. The absence of cause prevents blame. There is no external force to defeat, only conditions to endure. This approach redefined the genre. Later apocalypse films would imitate the structure. withholding explanation to preserve tension. Romero understood that fear does not come from knowing too little. It comes from knowing that answers may never arrive. The film does not promise resolution because real catastrophe rarely does. Fact number 15. The film ends where authority begins. The final scene suggests that the undead threat has been contained. Search parties move through the countryside. Guns fire with confidence. Fires burn efficiently. Order appears restored. And yet, the final images are not of safety. They are of disposal. Romero ends the film at the moment authority believes the crisis is over. The danger has been categorized. Procedures are followed. Efficiency replaces uncertainty. And in that transition, Ben is killed without hesitation. His survival no longer matters once the system resumes control. The horror does not end with the elimination of the undead. It shifts shape. Chaos is replaced by structure, but that structure does not recognize individuals. It processes them. By ending the story here, Romero suggests that the most dangerous moment is not collapse, but normalization. When violence becomes routine. When mistakes are absorbed without question. The film closes not on terror, but on certainty, and that certainty proves lethal. Night of the Living Dead endures because it never tells the audience how to feel. It presents collapse without explanation, survival without reward, and order without mercy. What lingers isn't the imagery of the dead, but the behavior of the living once fear takes hold. Romero didn't build a horror film to shock and release tension. He built one to leave tension unresolved. Every choice, every silence, every omission serves that purpose. The film doesn't close a chapter, it documents a moment. And decades later, that moment still feels uncomfortably unfinished because nothing in it was ever meant to reassure.